Shalom, I'm Rabbi Michael Panitz. I'm the Rabbi of Temple Israel in Norfolk, Virginia, and I'm here speaking to you standing on the pulpit of our congregation. As you can see, I'm wearing high holiday garb. This is called a kittel. It's the white robe that we traditionally wear at our New Year and our Day of Atonement. And my message is about the New Year and about the calendar. My message is entitled, Our Counterintuitive Calendar. It's now mid to late September, and we are at the beginning of the Jewish year. Jews know this, we grow up, we have holiday rituals, it's taught to us from earliest childhood, but stop and think. Why should this be? Why should the first day of the month of Tishrei, which is the 7th lunar month, counting from the month of the beginning of springtime, why should that be reckoned as the new year? All the more so when that's not how the Bible counts the months. The Bible counts the springtime month as the first month of the year. So how did Judaism end up displacing the new year by 6 months' time? Whenever we look at calendar systems, we need to remember that astronomical facts are behind them. Remember that the Earth is tilted on its axis as it revolves around the sun. Remember also that the orbit of the Earth is elongated a little bit. It's an ellipse, not a perfect circle. Those facts taken together account for the seasons of the year, upon which the rhythm of life on this planet depends. The seasons mean that there will be a time of pause, of hibernation, and then a time of germination, growth, life bursting forth. But it remains to be understood why a particular culture will select one or another point of the annual cycle to signify as the new year. After all, the Earth does not reach some celestial mile marker during its annual revolution around the sun. The Earth's motion is continuous. It is human culture that decides when to consider a new year to have begun. Looking at the peoples of the world, we can see that two moments in the cycle of the year are especially popular in the setting of a date for the new year. When the days begin to grow longer, meaning that the sun is moving higher in the sky, is one date. And the second one, when the sun has warmed the earth enough for plants and animals to renew their annual cycles of life. For the northern hemisphere, these two moments translate into a new year between December 25th and January 1st, or around the start of the springtime. Going back 10,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, the great invention of the new Stone Age was agriculture. For the agriculturalist, the shortening of the daylight hours was a harbinger of lean times, maybe even starving times. And the lengthening of the daylight hours meant that life and food would return. Our Stone Age era ancestors knew that the return of the sun was of critical importance, and they devoted enormous energy to, quote, help the sun to return. We know that from the existence of the great Stone Age megaliths around the world, huge, heavy stones dragged from afar and lifted into place without power tools. Imagine what planning and then what effort was required to accomplish that. Consider the megalith of Stonehenge in England. It is, in fact, a carefully positioned shrine to the sun. On the morning of the winter solstice, the rays of the rising sun pass between two closely spaced upright stones along the main axis of the shrine. Such a careful positioning could not have been accidental. Stonehenge proves that as long ago as the Neolithic era, Some cultures place the new year in late December, or 8 days later on January 1st. Getting closer to the Jewish world, the Romans began their calendar year in March, but they understood that January has a special quality. Dedicated to Janus, the Roman god of doorways who looked both backwards and forwards. The month of January looked both backwards to the 10 months just concluded and forwards to the cycle of the new year not quite born. We have a fascinating story in rabbinic literature telling us that the rabbis believed the January 1st holiday to have been instituted long ago in prehistoric times. According to the tale preserved in the Babylonian Talmud, the Roman holiday that spanned the 8 days from December 25th through January 1st had been instituted by Adam HaRishon, the first human. And their story is this. He was created around the time of the fall. When he was banished from Eden, he noticed the days getting shorter and shorter. He thought, according to the story, that the world was coming to an end, and it was his fault because of his sin. And so he prayed and he fasted for about an 8-day period just before the winter solstice. And then he noticed that the days stopped growing shorter. And he prayed and he fasted for another 8 days up through January 1st. And he noticed that the days were getting longer. So then he recognized that this is just the cycle of nature. And with tremendous gratitude to God, he declared 2 holidays. The first holiday, December 17th through December 24th. The second holiday, December 25th through January 1st. Those were both important Roman holidays. The first was called Saturnalia. The second one was called Calendai. According to the rabbis, they were good holidays, instituted for the sake of heaven, until later on they were corrupted by idolatry. This was the original iteration of the idea that we know from the song by the popular member of the Beatles group, George Harrison, "Here comes the sun, it's all right now." Now, just as famous in early days as the January 1st New Year was the cultural preference for a new year during the spring. We saw this amongst the ancient Persians. They celebrated the vernal equinox as their new year. They call it Nowruz, and its date is probably connected to the dating of our Jewish festival of Purim. Still closer to our Israelite ancestors were the ancient Mesopotamians. They also had a vernal equinox New Year's festival called Akitu, coming from the ancient word denoting barley planting time. The main Akitu celebration was in the month of Nisan, the month of the spring equinox. Some of the Mesopotamians, though, had a second New Year's festival, or an alternate New Year's festival, a kind of an echo Akitu, 6 months later in Tishrei, which gets us to this time of year. That is obviously the source of our Jewish dating of Rosh Hashanah to the new moon leading up to the autumnal equinox. I believe that there was something deeply spiritual at work in the preference shown by my ancestors for the Tishrei dating of the new year. Let's try and put ourselves into the mind of that society at this time of year. The mood prior to the harvest must have been one of anxiety. The harvest was still 2 weeks away. What if the harvest were to fail? Fungus could rot the food and deny it to us, and we would starve. Locusts or other pests could still eat all the food we hope to collect. The rains could come early before the grain is ripe, and it would be rotting in the fields. An enemy army could come and burn the crops. So many disasters could yet befall us. When we will have finished the harvest, it will then be time to celebrate. Every culture has developed its Oktoberfest or its Thanksgiving to celebrate the successful harvest. But at this time of year, another mood prevails. We need to ask heaven for help to face the uncertainties of life, the challenges of survival. That is the mood of the Tishrei dating of the Akitu. It spoke powerfully to the Jewish exiles. Believing in the one God, the God of Israel, my ancestors were a small minority in Babylonia, but they recognized that behind the paganism and the puppetry of the majority culture's Akitu, there was a genuine impulse, a response to the human condition that our religion could adopt and purify. We can now answer the question with which we began this meditation. Why is our new year in the autumn, especially since the new year of the Bible was in the spring? We see that it was the Jews of the Babylonian period who made the Akitu of the autumn into the Jewish Rosh Hashanah. Like its Mesopotamian precursor, our new year is solemn. It reckons with the insecurity and the transience of life, but it insists that life is meaningful and that life contains blessing as well as curse. Liturgy and ritual combine to reinforce the sense that the universe is a cosmos, not a blind accident. We live in such a cosmos, a place of promise as well as peril. When we succeed in being individually close to God, our Maker, and when we succeed in making our community close to God by reestablishing loving relations with our neighbors, then we do what we can to make the coming year a year of blessing. And so now is the time to wish each other Lishana Tova, a happy and a healthy new year. We don't know what the future will bring, which is why it is a wish. But every time we make a wish, we also make a promise to be the best version of ourselves, and in so doing, to help make the wish come true. Lishana Tova, Happy New Year.